Pink, a frog in search of a new pond, by Stuart Avery Gould. Prologue. What matters is that you believe the following tale is true. Personally, back at the beginning I had my doubts, and who won't have some doubts when they first find out that the adventures described in these pages are, in point of fact, the transformative journey belonging to one of the pond's most enduring creatures, a frog. Now for those of you who have just rolled your eyes, please don't be put off. There is so much to learn. Despite the many bad things going on here on planet Earth, there are many good things happening too, and one of them is that there are still stories that can thrill the spirit and soar the soul. This is one of those stories. Long before you and long before me, long before there was the quicksilver of Wi-Fi, broadband, streaming video, DVD and VCR, long before there was television, movies, radio and even books, there were stories that entertained, educated, motivated and inspired. And while some stories passed down through the centuries were meant to soothe and calm, and perhaps put the listener to sleep, this is a traveler's tale, meant to awaken the way within, showing the true purpose of the life journey is far more than a mere traveling to survive. Here is your invitation to live at life's opportunities as shown through the heroic actions and revealing insights of Pink the frog. To verify this story, I interviewed dozens of people, Asians and Westerners, Tibetan lamas and Zen masters, Burmese teachers and Taoist practitioners, cramming notebooks full before setting ink to paper. Some of the interviews took me to Japan, and some to China, and some to certain stages here in the United States. But alas, only a few knew Pink's remarkable tale, and fewer still could recount it from beginning to end. After all, this took place some time ago. But the story still haunted me, and I was still hopeful, so I spent many more months conducting research until, finally, blessedly, I was able to nail down an accurate record of the facts, which is how I come to you vouching for the story's authenticity. And whether any of my efforts were worth it is of course up to you to decide. After all, if history had taught us anything, it's that some stories are for telling and some stories are for believing. And the story of Pink the frog, well, that is a story forever. Stuart Avery Gould. Chapter 1. Leap of Faith. The most meaningful journey to take is the one within. Once upon a place, the pond was not deep that day. Indeed, it had been shallow for some time, but most of the pond dwellers didn't mind. It was just the way things were. For instance, the turtles were quite happy as long as they had water enough to swim around in. They even liked to bask themselves in the sun as they topped the surface, with the water being just so great for the grass too. They liked how the shallow water made it easy to bob in for something tasty. The fish didn't complain either. Being closer to the surface made it easier to seize a floating munchie. Truth to tell, For the inhabitants of the pond, there was contentment enough to go around, never a grumble or a whisper of complaint. Most took to spending average days living out average lives without too much moodiness. Most, but not all. Pink was a frog, but more than that, he was a frog with a proud heritage. Even though he had no memory of it, he didn't know, for example, that the ancients in China believed that frogs came from the moon, hatching from eggs that fell from the sky with a silver rain. Oh, he could go hiking back in his own time, remembering his earliest days at the pond, before he had arms and before he had legs, remembering what it was like to joyously zoom through the deep water, repelled by his tail. And when he was older and there was jumping to be done, nothing pleased him more. Pink was an incredibly gifted jumper, the best at going the distance. On one hop, Pink perfectly sailed 9 feet, 9 feet 3 inches, an unbeatable record. Such was the remarkable talent of Pink the Frog that all the denizens of the pond would stop whatever they were doing to watch when Pink jumped. They felt privileged to witness such glory. Pink thought nothing of it. All he knew was that jumping great distances was terrific fun, and that now, sadness of sadness, there was no good jumping at the pond anymore, not with the water nearly gone. Which brings us to the point that in order to live a life of grace beyond gravity, you have to have two things. First, you have to have a strong desire to live your best life. And second, you have to have the willingness to live it each and every day. Pink had both. What he didn't have was water, and Pink needed water to jump in. I saw that at this point, that the pond had always been spring-fed, and while doing my research, I couldn't find any clues as to what had changed the course of the spring. What I did find was that while staying half-heartedly in the same old spot was fine for others, it was not at all fine for Pink. Pink shrugged and sighed. He longed for the breadth and the depth of the once upon a time deep water. He had taken such pleasure in the way the heavenly hills and intoxicating scents of lotus and lily blossoms used to rule the water's surface, and who could argue with the serene rhythm of the reeds as they sway along with the bamboo breezes? And this waterscape had brought such happiness to his inner mind, but gone now it was, and what remained in its place did nothing for Pink's soul. The ancient Taoist Chuang-Tzu wrote, "Let everything be allowed to do what it naturally does, so that its nature will be satisfied." Now, obviously, amphibians can't read. But when you're a frog, what you do and see every day shows you that all living things have a place in the natural order of things, and that it has its own destiny to fulfill. Pink sensed, no, he knew without any doubt in his heart that what he wanted more than anything else was to live a life that would enable him to be one with what he was. So strong was Pink's belief in his inborn talents and unique capabilities that he spent his days sitting at the pawn's edge, just dreaming the biggest dreams of becoming his own best self. But alas, while Pink's dreams got bigger, the pond got smaller, until that startling day when the pond was no longer a pond at all, and the comfy, cozy, safe surroundings that Pink had for so long enjoyed were growing fit, gone. Nothing left. That's an exaggeration, of course. There were trees and stones and helpless bones, all sorts of things left behind in the pond bed. And there was the mud, much mud everywhere. For days the mud was where Pink sat, and for nights the mud was where Pink slept. But he didn't sleep much. It's hard to let go when fear lurks inside you, and Pink was afraid, very. Change, real change, is unsettling. When change happens, it can create a kind of fear that can take hold of even the most confident of folks. It can instill confusion, hesitation, anger, anxiety, and desperation. Fear of change can rip and wrap and seize you with such strength it can paralyze you. But only if you let it. Fear of change, fear of taking risks, fear of ridicule, of that someone will disapprove of your goals and dreams. These are the enemies of intention and transformation. But even enemies of enemies, and the enemy of fear is found in courage. Courage is not the absence of fear, it is acting in spite of fear. For some, the realization of this simple fact takes time. For many, the realization never comes at all. For Pink, it pretty much took about a week. Day after day, Pink experienced emotions he never felt before. He was confused and uncertain. He tussled with his thoughts about the cherished past, about his deep water pond the way it was. The memories returned to him. After all, the bond was the only place he had ever known. But who can guess that precise moment when your world is going to change, when out of some divine blue, Providence provides you with the strength to hold on or to let go. To be awake to choice is to be awake to transformation. As Pink sat in the darkness of the mud, pondering his choices, a most important revelation came to him. His life was his to live intentionally. Pink made the choice to let go of his past, engage the future, and give birth to the great new idea of his life. It was 5 minutes before dawn on the 7th day when Pink took a final glance back at his once beloved surroundings, let go all the glories of his past adventures, and made the most perfect leap into the greatest adventure of all. Chapter 2. Wise Eyes. Be ever mindful of the way, paying attention to the seen and the unseen. Pink seemed almost to fly at the beginning, feeling positive, energetic with a renewed expansive spirit. Pink wanted to reach the highest heights, cover the greatest distances, and with determined perseverance, experience all the magnificence of life's wonders. Those were his attentions anyway. As I have already pointed out, Pink's legs were beyond phenomenal. So mighty were his muscles that his leaping power was unmatched. Few in this world had his stamina, and fewer still his determination to travel to the beyond. In other words, jumping was never any problem for him, not so long as his legs worked. To underscore the point, on his first day, Pink made terrific time, tirelessly covering a tremendous distance. That was nothing. On the second day, never once getting out of breath, he traveled twice the distance. Again, it was nothing. And such a shame that back then the Guinness Book of World Records people weren't around to document the third day when, without a single rest, he whipped out another daily distance record by mid-afternoon. Once again, it was all for nothing, because even though Pink had bested himself each day, he ended up delivering himself instead smack into a nightmare. And what a terrible thing that was. Now, if Pink had known about the thicker, then you can imagine tangle of towering trees that soon surrounded him. He might have stayed home, trapped by his initial doubts. And if he had known that in the dark wood of reality there is no clear path to openness, he definitely would have stayed at home. If only. Pink took a deep breath, another deeper, bracing himself, body at the ready. He set to work, not easy. He tried with all his might to overcome the thicket of cypress and pine. He jumped and he bounded, each time readjusting his trajectory, going this way, that way, left and right. And no matter where else he asked, it was all struggle and fire and strife. Even an unusual strong tailwind was no help. Nothing was of any help. Pink did his best. Despite his every attempt, it was no contest. The sky-topping trees beat him back, pummeling him, brutalizing his body, forcing him to fall like a stone fast and hard to the earth. With repeated efforts came cramping in his legs, and that didn't help much either. On this day of days, Pink experienced the world like he had never experienced it before, a world of failure and setback, unkind and uncaring. What a crusher! Exhausted, Pink sat pale and shaking. He had never been more miserable. Glazed over with fatigue, he managed to blink away his tears and sighed. He took a final glance at his predicament, and, in the very bright moonlight, looked pleadingly up to the heavens for help. There wasn't any. Pink said his heart was shredded. He felt defeated and disheartened, a sad, inept creature, doomed to a miserable life with no possibility for tomorrow, and that quite simply was dead. Pink lay devastated on the ground. What a mistake it had been to think he could pursue a life that mattered. He had undertaken this journey with such hopes, He had come so far, tried so hard, but now his great shining dream began to fade. Who did he think he was? Who was he to think he was so special? Who was he to think that he had what it takes to follow his dream? Who was he to think he possessed the abilities to get what he wanted out of life? Who? The words reverberated, filling Pink's ears. He blinked and he did his best to block out the horriness of it all. Who? Again, who? Then again, and continuing. Now it's probably safe to say there are limits to what a frog psyche can endure, and to prove the point, Pink, feeling himself starting to go mad, frantically ordered his brain to haunt this unrelenting questioning, commanding his gray cells to just stop. No use. The dreaded repetition did not lessen. Who? Pink could find no way to hide from this echoing torment. And with good reason, Pink tilted his head and realized suddenly that the repeating taunt of who's were not really who's at all. As Pink paid closer attention, they sounded clearly like who. And then Pink understood they were not coming from him. No, they sounded like they were coming out of the chill darkness, from somewhere behind and from above, which they were. Who has not yet discovered the way will not find it. Pink pivoted and squinted up into the moonlight. There, in a giant twisted tree, amidst the sheltering branches, deep in the deepest shadow, blinked a pair of bright, saucer yellow eyes. Pink looked closer and was relieved. He didn't know a lot of things, but he didn't know an owl when he saw one. My way is blocked. It's the trees that keep me down. Pink blurted defensively. The trees that keep you down are the trees that leave me high. Are they not the same trees? Asked Owl. What does that matter? Asked Pink, sounding a bit irritated. They're keeping me from continuing on my way. If the path you travel has no obstacles, it leads nowhere. Pink didn't have much to say to that. How blind you are to the way, intoned Owl. The way is not a path, it is the landscape of the soul that the universe fills with its breath. Within you and without you, it is there for you. Be open to this, and the universe will always lift you up, not keep you down. All else is futile struggle. Interesting, Pink thought. There was no denying the fact that this owl was one smart old bird. If Owl could help him out, that would be something. Can you see where I need to go from up there? Pink asked, headshake from Owl. To see where you need to go, you need only to go inside yourself, clearing away the confusion of your mind, so that it can hear the promptings of your own heart. To know who you really are and how you wish to be is the kind of vision even the silent possess. I could use eyes like yours, Pink said. Would you help me? You must fight your own way. Sit down. There was a weariness to Al's voice, but also a note of compassion. Only your own heart has the power to guide you, Al continued. You must rely on yourself over any other offering, born of the heart, owned by the Spirit. The path to the magic life cannot be taught, it must be taken. So where do I begin? Ping asked. Begin where you are, Al explained. Start by awakening the way within. You must become open to the way in order to receive it. How? Ping wondered. Not how, Al quickly responded. Now. And with that, Al fluttered down from his branch to a perch in front of Ping, ruffled his wings, and smoothed a few feathers with his beak. The dream does not begin unless you do, Al said. And now is the moment to grasp power existence. Too many wait for just the right time and just the right place to act. The very act of waiting actually pushes the desired events away. You must do in order to be. Ping naturally knew none of this. Please, I need your guidance to get to where I'm going. Do you know where it is that you are going ultimately? Ping repented to clear his throat. Sort of. If you don't know where you're going, any road will take you there. Al took a few steps before turning, despite his advanced years. Al moved with a graceful liveliness. He looked at Ping with slight curiosity. But to know what you don't know is the start of everything. This is the start of an intentional life. An intentional life? An intentional living means what you do is one with what you are. Clarity of purpose, an open heart, and a lively mind gives us the power to direct our destinies, to live by choice, not by chance. This is what it is to live an intentional life. Then living an intentional life is what I dream to do. Prepare for disappointment, said Al. You are so obviously wise and great, said Ping. I ask for your tutelage, please. I think not. But I have come so far. I wish you safe travel back. What will I do? Chalk it up to experience. Good luck. Again, I ask for your guidance, please. Again, I tell you, I am sorry. No. And with that, Al flew back up to his branch. Ping was young, and because of his youthful years, insistence was still very much part of his temperament. Taking no for an answer was simply not something he accepted easily. Irritated, he asked again. No. He persisted. No. Then he implored. No. Pleaded. No. Sniveled. No. Groveled. No. Begged. No. Then he held his breath and began to jump up and down, not in frustration, as you might think. What Ping was actually attempting to do with all of his energies was to jump up to the branch where Al was perched. Never mind that. His arms and legs were that tired. Ping was not giving in. A jump got him a little higher, a little closer. Who knows where his newfound strength was coming from? Whatever it was, there was no doubt that after a few hours, Pink was killing the air. No veering this time, every jump was getting up just a tad higher. And that was how it went for much of the night. Pink was constantly jumping, not giving up, trying to plant himself on Owl's branch. Owl paid no attention, busying himself from time to time with some feather maintenance, until after one final enormous jump, like lost magic, Pink actually shared the same branch with Owl. Attitude equals altitude, said Owl. What? Exactly. Owl flew down to the mist-shrouded ground, Pink, grasping for breath from his labors, jumped down after him. This is fun, he said, panting his lungs out, trying for a joke. Haven't been able to do much jumping since I arrived here. Persistent you are, I'll grant you that, said Owl. Pink detected a subtle softening in Owl's attitude. Well, if being persistent is something that will help me live an intentional life, then that is what I'll do. Persistence is the difference between a strong will and a strong want, Owl replied. Then you will take me? Pink asked with mounting excitement. Owl blinked in his direction. I prefer to spend my time unpestered, but I am reminded only of this. It is said, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. Pink lit up. He understood happy news when he heard it. It was thrilling not to make the journey alone. I cannot find the words to thank you. Then we're off to a wonderful start, because for now I would appreciate not even a peep from you. Quiet is what you will need if you are to tap into your passion, your true purpose, your heart. Chapter 3 Beginner's Mind. An instant of realization makes its home in a quiet mind. And with that piece of advice of Gwentower, heading down the moonlit path for who knows where, with Pink excitedly trooping behind, keeping as quiet as he could, his thoughts going in no particular direction. For Pink, it was not easy to do any solid thinking with his stomach gurgling. He had not eaten for some time, and he wondered if he should say something to Owl. But he decided against it, fearing it might upset Owl and send him flying off for another branch, and Pink had had enough of that. So in silence, he followed right behind Owl, looking for flying birds, swarmies, rollers, or any other nipples of nourishment, fighting against the beginning throbs of a migraine. It was another hour before Pink finally asked where they were going. Owl said nothing. Pink then asked Owl if he would explain things when they got there. I'll explain things to you now, since you do not want to take advantage of walking with your thoughts. Right, sorry, Pink said. I'll scout. Apologies not needed for me. You must pay attention to your own thoughts. Take time to steal your mind from all that is around you. Connect with your inner self. Beyond words, beyond the chatter of concepts and judgments, lies a place beyond place. where the conflicts of the mind are silenced by the true calling of the heart. Eventually, you will come to know the true journey of life is the movement of the heart towards its home. Outpours by a root and twin stump and close his eyes. Listen, you can hear it. Can you hear the voice of your heart? If not, then go deeper. It is there waiting. Welcome its strength. Learn to trust its inexhaustible power. The moment you hear its call, follow it, for it will always know where to take you. Pink closed his eyes and attempted to concentrate. It didn't come easily. Distraction still pulls you. Owl's blend, concentrate on emptiness and let go of all that you know. You must be empty in order to openly receive the life that is yours. Only when we are empty can we be filled. Then you will find beginner's mind. But for now, you must practice bringing a total focus to what you do. At first, it will take great energy. Then, like all things that are practiced, an easy will develop. Learn to become one with the task at hand, and then you become one with the universe and all the abundance that it can provide. Pink gazed out with a look of wonder. There was no doubting Owl's wisdom. Sitting very straight, summoning the silence, Pink began again, with deep and steady concentration. Owl advised that only in darkness can you see the awakening of the true self. Pink closed his eyes, and into the darkness he went. Not just his soul needed searching, he thought, but his spirit too, and for that matter, his heart as well. Pink's mind began racing, and he sighed. Clearly, it would take many more lessons from Owl to make a difference. For his part, Owl didn't mind. He knew that access to the inner intelligence of the universe was dependent on the truth that it is the learners who survive the learned. As mentor, Owl knew his job was to provide not only instruction but encouragement and patience. So began the lessons. For weeks, Owl instructed Pink on a world of things, starting with the significance of risk-taking, not to throw caution to the wind kite that leads far too many to failure, but the well-planned, calculated action kite that promises a strong possibility of success. Owl explained that in order to experience wonder, you have to experience the taking of risk. Risk converts opportunity into reality. However, Owl was very careful to warn Pink about the importance of clearly understanding the consequences that accompany risk-taking. A risk well defined is already a risk have taken. Owl said, clarify the risk, define it in precise terms, determine what obstacles and difficulties you will have to overcome in order to succeed. Prepare for contingencies. What is the worst case scenario? What is your fallback plan? In other very important words, look before you leap. I have it from an unimpeachable source that this very conversation was the origin of the age-old adage. Pink took the whole business very much to heart, committing it all to memory, especially the statement that our pastor makes such a point of. To avoid taking a risk is to take the biggest risk of all. Right then and right there, I'll explain that only those who risk something have the ability to achieve something, and that so often the path to success is the one most often not taken. Become a purveyor of possibility, outlook. Know that mistakes can be overcome, but inaction imprisons the soul. Remember, you will always be more disappointed by the things that you didn't do than by the things that you did. Again, you must do in order to be. And as Ping asked question after question, I went to great lengths to underscore how risk is the catalyst for transformation that can transport you from where you are to where you want to be. To grow is the risk. A failure to take risk will result in failure to experience your destiny. Summing up, I'll stress the importance of studying risk from all angles, targeting the best angle from which to approach risk-taking is from the triangle. Ping understood and made the following pledges. I promise to do my best to accept the challenges of risk. I will make careful assessments of taking a risk and weigh it against not taking a risk. I will, as you have instructed, have smart risk-taking a part of my life. I will build my risk-taking confidence, starting with taking small risks, working my way up until I am comfortable and confident in the taking of larger risks. Oh, you are a genius. I promise I will not fail. And I promise you that you will fail. I was quick to correct, often and miserably, more than you can imagine. Each failure will be paralyzingly painful and will make you cringe and cry and give up in a minute, because that is what failure can do. But as devastating and demoralizing as failure is, there is something much more tragic and terribly worse, the absence of failure. For then you have not exerted the will to attempt success. Adopt the philosophy that failure is one of nature's wonderful teachers, just as water effortlessly nourishes all things. Failure enriches. It imparts truth and wisdom, insight and knowledge that help you grow. Regard failure as teachings, nothing more, nothing less. What you must hold close is this: do not allow failure to keep you from your wants or desires and prevent you from living a life well lived. Failure can be defeating or defeated. Alas, it will always be up to you. I'm not quitter, Ping said. We'll see, Al said quietly to himself. Chapter 4. The Test. The true way is burning desire, for the purest metal is the result of the hottest fire. Now was the time for Rao to give Ping a small task to test his character and courage. I know you think you're good at jumping, Al said, But let me see how good you are at getting up and walking around the beach. Pink shook his head. I couldn't quite make out what you said. I am old, then sometimes my swings are stiff and ache with arthritis. But my speech is clear. You heard me. Pink stared out incredulously. Forgive me, but in the first time I can't walk. I have never walked before. And in the second place, I'm not the greatest jumper on the planet for nothing. Whatever the destination might be, jumping is all that I will ever need to get me where I go. I'll glad and bellow back. Now, pay very strict attention. Walk you can and walk you will, beginning now. Always been most fascinating spending this time together, and I wish you joyous jumping to wherever such a singular talent takes you. I'm sure you will do just fine. Pink turned pale. Our dismissal speech was not lost on him. If he didn't at least attempt to follow our direction, our masterful mentoring would be over for him, and with it would go everything he wanted and needed. That much he knew. Now, for the past 150 years or so, a bit of a battle has been waged among some in the scientific community as to whether frogs possess the ability to walk. Herpetology honchos are quick to argue that the African walking frog that resides on the western coast of Ecuador and the North American green tree frog both prefer walking to jumping. The naturalist folks, who are famous for not backing down from a dispute, claim that what is really going on with these two species is more of a crawling movement. Semantics aside, if you're looking for the ultimate proof that a frog can get up on its hind legs and set down for a stroll, you should have been there at that one particular night for to see Pink do just exactly that. But not the first time, not the second time either. And if you had some place to go that evening, you probably would have gone, since waiting around for Pink to actually take a few serious steps took quite a while. A sight of a discombobulated frog stumbling, tripping, and falling on his face was not a pretty one. I can't do it, agonized Pink. Al didn't seem the least bit surprised. His wise eyes pinned Pink with a stare. Believe you can, and you won't. Believe you can, and you will. Words from belief from Jackson. Al continued. To take control of your destiny, you must take control of your thoughts. How and what you think will determine your future. When it comes to living your dream, whether you think you will or think you won't, you're right either way. If you would like, I will share with you a helpful insight to keep you up and going. Pink pleaded, tell me please, my knees are scraped and I'm teetering here, about to go sprawling down again. So, what's the secret? There was a pause and then Al whispered these exact words. To live an intentional life, Do not work on your legs, but on your will. Pink reflected for a moment, marveling at our smartness. How lucky it was for him to come upon such a teacher. Pink realized that he could not disappoint him. Filled with renewed confidence, he entered the state of deep focus concentration, regained his steadiness, then, with head held back, took a deep breath and, with all the power of will he could muster, tried one step forward, and fell again. Hard, total wipeout disaster, pathetic. I could use another hint here. Fall down 7 times, stand up 8. I'll advise. Be one-hearted and one-minded. Living an intentional life is a step-by-step process in which each step forward brings you closer to the realization of the greatness that lies within. Accept this and you take the first step. Determined, Pink allowed downwards. Pink follows downwards. Try again and again until at last the face smiled, and suddenly there he was, his amazing legs taking one step, then a second step, a third step, a fourth great step, then a few more, his balance becoming established. Pink had no idea where his new ability was coming from, but here he was putting one leg in front of the other, moving along as if it were nothing new. Even Owl could not deny what a startling spectacle it was to see a frog plodding along upright, but that wasn't the point. The point was that Pink had the courage to take a risk, fail, try again and again, and finally succeed. Pink was indeed walking, but the crazy fact was that it was his faith in himself that had him floating above the ground. "Look at me!" Owl watched him calmly. "You overcame doubt by leaving it behind. Skepticism has lost its grip on you. Never forget that faith in himself must be a part of your every action and thought. This will sustain you against setbacks and defeats. But know, too, that no matter how great your faith in your talent and your skill, you will wander the world aimlessly if you don't have a true vision." Interesting, Pink shrugged. "Maybe if the moon was a bit brighter, I could see a bit truer." Owl could dully shake his head. "Your vision is your higher wisdom. It is higher wisdom that clears your path. Once again I tell you to take the time to awaken your mind, your heart, and your spirit to the echo of your life's destiny. Listen to the silences between the sounds. This is the music of your soul. There are long ways to journeys you must take to discover the way. Want to lose yourself and want to find yourself." It's those words. There is nothing that is outside the mind. You must look inward before you can move outward on your journey. Pink thought he understood and beamed. "I don't mind so much taking a few moments to come up with something." Owl stared at the heavens and sighed deeply. Then he flew above to a tree branch and got comfortable, the sun beginning to rise on the horizon. Still, I was an internal optimist and thought this was a lesson that Pink would not have to linger on for long. Maybe the next few months would be enough, and then again it might take a little longer than that. Chapter 5 Visionary Quest. Listen to the voice of the cedars, where when no wind stirs, there you will find yourself. The winter winds came early. The icy blusters scattered the plump leaves across the ground and swayed the needles of the ancient pines. Over 6 months had passed since Pink left his native pond. Now Pink sat hunkered in a dark, dank log hollow. Pinched with cold, he heard the clacking of the bamboo grove, but his mind was not there. Hadn't been for weeks, he had sent it away to somewhere beyond form and sound, to a place of astonishing beauty and being. Pink had found himself finally at last in the inner landscape of a settlement. Owls had shown him the way through meditation. This was a different frog. Every morning Pink would sit in inner quiet for hours. On this particular morning he was deep in meditation as usual. Then, in his mind's eye, he had this purifying vision. In the distance, soaring snow-capped mountain peaks sparkled in the dancing spring sun. The wonderfully warming rays of water melting the snow, filling the streams and pools of the garden with waters clear and deep. And not even the most articulate of frogs could ever hope to describe the size and scent of the blooming magnolias and cherry blossoms that scatter their petals and perfume the air, or the lovely colors of the following wisterias, azaleas, and irises on display at the most laden pondside. Still enjoying this magnificent inner vision, Pink savored the joyful soundscapes, the choir of bird song, and the gentle bubbling of water, interrupted only by the splashes coming from young, jubilant frogs trying their best to go the distance. Pink's heart was full. He was in a place few of us are ever fortunate enough to visit. He was a momentarily living inside his vision. Later that day, Pink described his vision to Owl. Is it possible that such a place of bliss and splendor exists here on earth? He asked. Owl noted that such a wonder of the world did in fact exist. There is a place called the Emperor's Garden that ranks among the treasures on earth. It is a place of bliss and greatest splendor, just like the place in your vision. But to savor its exalted grandeur, you will have to travel many miles, fraught with many challenges. Owl informed Pink that the greatest cause for trampling would be the necessity to cross Splat River. But that is my destiny, Pink quickly responded. Now, in my desire to present this story with the utmost accuracy, I need to point out that for centuries, Black River has been officially mapped by cartographers as Rock River, but was called Black River by the local inhabitants of the woods, who witnessed so many travelers go black when they tried to cross the treacherous waters. The river's swift, smashing currents and jagged rocks were deadly. Local denizens knew better than to even think about attempting to cross Black River, whatever reason one had for getting to the other side was not important enough to doom one's life. Not a problem, Pink stated unafraid. You've never seen how far I can jump. Just show me this Black River, and I'll show you how I can get across without even dunking a toe. That's how great my talent is when it comes to jumping. Such is my skill. What is foolishly thought may foolishly be dead, Al said. I don't understand, said Pink. You're about to, said Al. Talent comes naturally, while skill must be learned. I have seen your talents with my own eyes, but talents are incomplete when not allied with skills. Talent may open doors, but skill will allow you to go through. You must develop both talent and skills, or you will never be a master of your life. Pink sat silent for a moment, blinked again. I want to become master of my life. To want is not enough. There is only to do. You must do in order to master the circumstances of life, or risk having the circumstances of life master you. I am ready. Then we begin, announced Dow. And so they did in earnest. The training schedule was simple, undeviating, no frills. It began by building Pink's muscles, making them strong enough to face the challenge of Black River. Pink started his exercises by holding 1-pound rocks in his fingers while hanging upside down from a tree branch for half an hour every day. At first, this caused him trouble, and although his arms ached and his legs hurt, he kept at it. Within a month, Pink could hold 5-pound rocks, and while the blood rushing to an upside-down head would mean headaches for most, Pink got to the point where he could seldom pass a branch without grabbing a couple of rocks to happily get in some extra upside-down time. Then to build up his thighs, for 3 hours every day, Pink would do log lifts similar to what we call leg lifts. He would balance a heavy log on his feet, lifting it in the air, pushing it up and down with his legs while lying on his back. For further strength and stamina, he spent 3 more hours each day on jumping jacks and squat jumps, followed by jumping from above and from below, whipping out jumps in all directions, jumps each week, so that the very act of jumping would always come without a second thought. I'll explain the difference between a natural skill and being skillful. That training leads to technique, which in turn leads to talent and skill, becoming one total embodiment, always instinctive and immediate. This is how training went for Ping, hour after hour, grabbing 40 wings only whenever he could. Ping's practice sessions continued day after day until there had been a whole year of this concerted effort. While days were spent strengthening the body, nights were spent strengthening Ping's mind, because there were still many mysteries that needed solving. Some of these mysteries had to do with the universe, but most had to do with Ping's golden place in it. I'll explain. The unknown is always. Never count on the future nor your ability to control it. To live an intentional life is to recognize yourself as being one with the process of the present. Change is a constant companion, allowing for the limitless possibilities that it holds for all living things. Have the grace to make the universe your partner, welcoming the opportunities that are the result of continuing change. Go with the flow, and you will find yourself supported by the mysterious unity of its power. When change comes to visit, when obstacles come into view, be as what you are from, be as water. I will be all that I can be. Ping replied, no, be more of what you are. You needn't worry, was Ping's answer. Thanks for your teachings. I have the power to swim upstream if I ever have to. Resentment had taught out that Ping was a good learner, but not a particularly fast one. Al continued. To possess the power of true strength is to possess the ability to yield, to change course if need be. Again, I instruct you to be as if water. Few elements are more yielding than water. It is the softest, most yielding thing, yet its power is such that it can ultimately prevail over hardest rock or the strongest steel. Fluid and flexible, water twists and turns, flowing around over under. It changes its direction freely along the way. There is nothing that water cannot overcome, yet its essential natural in nature is to yield, to give way. Water has the relentless power to transform and restructure all things that stand in its path, as do you. Know that you have the capacity to create uninvited obstacles with a mindful flow, changing jeopardy, problems and challenges into opportunities, defeat into victory. Ping was confused. Let me get this straight. I use this flow to figure out what I need to do. Al replied, other voices will try to lead you to what you need to do. The flow will lead you to what needs to be done. The flow is your natural path, the force that allows you to persevere against inner doubts and external adversities. The flow is everywhere. It is the movement of all life. It has no beginning and has no end. The flow is the total ongoing process of the universe. Go with the flow, because the flow knows where to go. Align your daily life with it, and you will ride its powerless wave, taking advantage of its all-knowing direction. Abandon its way, and you abandon your right to live life to the fullest. To live an intentional life is to enter the stream of your destiny, always making use of its current. It's a strange thing, said Ping. I feel as if I have learned so much, and at the same time, I feel as if I have learned nothing. Ao said, there are no words to contain all wisdom, such is true enlightenment. What you mean is that you are already to seek your destiny, just as I believe that you are. Yes, that's what I mean, answered Ping. Then Aura did the most remarkable and unexpected thing. He bowed and, in a very, very quiet voice, said, to do is to be. And with that, Ao turned and headed down the seldom traveled path that led to Spread River. Ping jumped right behind, a much humbler and wiser frog than he was when he first entered these woods many months ago. Chapter 6 Current Event. The shade embraces the one and becomes the model for all. White noise. Louder and louder white noise. That's what greeted Owl and Ping when they approached the sheer cliff walls that fell away down the Spread River. The foam power of rushing rapids and twisting currents roared, pounding the rocks, a constant thunder rising up to the heavens. The perfect light of the full moon brightened the scene. Ping hopped onto a boulder and surveyed the river's force. It was dizzying. There was a certain pressure in his heart. In this contemplative moment, he began to feel a twinge of certainty, but would not allow it to surface. Such is the challenge for Mao. Prologue played from Ping with a drop of doubt in his voice. Then nothing from either, as the silence between them almost matched the constant booming waters of Spread River. A sudden shining began to pull in Ping's eyes. There was so much he wanted to say, but wondered how and where to begin. Ping didn't have to wonder long. Out sent it on and made a sweeping gesture with his right wing. He gazed at the treacherous waters. A river has no shape, he said. It is only contained by the boundaries it carves out for itself. You too are like the river. I hope I have what it takes, Ping responded. Ao turned to Ping, facing him directly. Quietly he intoned, to live an intentional life, believe and will are what it takes. With these two things, all is possible. The way is not in the sky, the way is in the heart. For the traveler who knows his direction, there is always a favorable wind. Thank you for the lessons learned, Ping said humbly. Ao said, it is not what you have learned, but what you do with it that will create your difference. You can fulfill your destiny by helping others. 1,000 candles can be lit from a single candle. Be a giver of light. Use your capacity to inspire and uplift others. I will tell my story to everyone I meet, Ping affirmed. Those who live an intentional life do not tell their story. By example, they are the story. You must do in order to be. Go through the world. Ping gave a soft nod of his head. You just want me. This I will. And with those words, out took flight until he reached a perfect observation point hovering 250 feet above, center over a Splat River, waiting. Pink blinked and blinked again as he stared down at Water's intention. Then he loosened the muscles in his neck, rocking his head left, then right, and stretched his legs as he began to concentrate. He had to consider every detail if he was going to successfully cross Splat River to reach the other side. He had to account for the wind speed and direction and combine that with what he knew about the trajectory. Pink evaluated and calculated and considered. He approximated and analyzed and surmised. For yes, he had to concern himself with angle and distance, and true, he had to assess the height, and absolutely of course, he had gauged for gravity. All of these things had to be factored into flight, or down he would go, so his mind spun. Moving in a whirl. Then, amidst it all, a most truly amazing thing happened. His mind went empty, blank, vacant, clear. His mind was void of any inhibition or doubt, and was filled with only a sense of oneness with the air. In sum, Pink was about to become one with the experience. Pink looked down, then across, and flashed one final smile up to Owl. Then he took one final deep breath for courage, imbued with the power of will and belief and intention. He jumped just the highest jump he had ever jumped, with an arc of such perfection that left no doubt he would clear Splat River with plenty to spare. "Fly!" Owl yelled, and indeed Pink flew farther and farther, soaring through the air with remarkable grace, conquering the expanse between the banks with singular ease. There was no thought about any of this, because Pink's mind was clear. His oneness with the air carrying him farther than he had ever gone before. Oh, what Bridal Down must have felt as he saw Pink defy all laws of gravity. But Owl felt and saw nothing, not the rush of wings that came from above, straight and deadly, not the size of the huge hawk that swooped down without warning. Not until the hawk's razor-sharp talons sheared into the muscles of old Owl's back did he feel anything, and that only for an instant. Chapter 7. The Flow. A river flows to join the spiraling dance of life. The explosion of feathers burst the air, breaking Pink's perfect concentration. "No!" Pink screamed as he saw the hawk fly away with Owl in his grasp. Just a few feathers zigzagging downward were all that remained of Owl. Pink went spiraling wildly out of control, plunging, windmilling, and overran, down and down, still more, with nothing below to break his fall, nothing but the rapids and the rocks of Splat River, which within a finger snap had him totally As Pink plummeted into the rushing rapids, he quietly kicked at the icy water. He was stunned that his mighty legs were no match for the even more mighty, teeming, or white water torrents that were sweeping him away. Pink struggled madly. He sank and surfaced again and again. Jumped under the water for a second, the next moment pushed under for an eternity. Still he kicked harder and harder, thinking that he would rise enough to fight a way to gain control, go against the current, and swim to the safety of shore. His once tireless legs began to flail feebly. His strength began to leave him. His whole world began to leave him. Belief was everything, and Pink was going so fast. Now he could only use his weakening arms to fend off the rocks that were bashing his body. There was nothing that Pink could do to stop the painful punishment. The more he tried to fight against the breakers, the more the roaring surge slammed him against the rocks, pummeling him, gasting his skin, and tearing his soul. Pink's feeble attempts to conquer the current seemed too little. Splat River would have none of it. Its grasping rush had its hold on him, attacking him, shooting him through swords, mashing him hard against boulder tracks. Exhausted, he panicked badly, losing his buoyancy, yet with every ounce of strength remaining. He tried to kick, to grab, to someone escape the fate that now it seemed inevitable. Zero chance. Pink's world went white behind his eyes. Sprat River began to claim him. He started to sink. Doom was only seconds away. Then somehow, by some miracle, he remembered those words. Be as you are, be as if water. Not a lot of words, but enough. Suddenly salvation seemed possible. Pink remembered those teachings, giving him over to them. Fluid and flexible, water twists and turns, flowing around over under. It changes its direction freely along the way, overcoming obstacles. Al had said, to live an intentional life is to learn how to swim with an existence that flows. Go with the flow, because the flow knows where to go. Pink started to do that very thing, startled at first by how swiftly the water loosened its death grip and instead supported him, guided him, protected him, as it simply followed its own nature around the rocks and boulders. More fascinating still was the remarkable power Pink began to feel as he adapted to the flow, befriending it, dancing with it, on and on. And by doing so, he was becoming an agent of change himself, feeling the rightness of it. This wonderful moment revealed that living an intentional life was simply to let the potential of his life live through him. How true! As Saul had told him, happiness is not a destination, it is a process, a wondrous, guiding journey. He could hear Al's voice saying, following the flow is the way of life that sustains us, guides us, and leads us to boundless joy and insight. Life, after all, is for us to live fully, wonderfully. We are travelers journeying together, each and all created to live glorious lives that matter, allowing for our truest destiny to take its course. And since time is like a river, how long been traveled down the great watercourse of Splat River? How many more minutes, hours, days, weeks, maybe months had passed before it delivered him to his destiny isn't clear. There is no time frame for how long one must spend waiting for happiness. It's just not necessary. Pink had learned this one simple, essential truth. While we spend our time waiting for happiness, happiness is always here waiting for us. Happiness is the great core of our reality, rooted within, ready to be deservedly claimed. Within each of us there is a pink, for we are not born into the world, but born out of it. And certainly our lives on in pink through his teachings. When we follow our nature, we give full expression to our souls, our talents, our gifts, our passion, our power, our deepest sense of who we are and how we wish to be. When we flow in complete accord with our correct path, a lot of wonderful truths certainly become evident. Our joy, the magical life, was with us all along, waiting only to be recognized for the fundamental force it is. Can we really live a life that is both ageless and timeless? Bet on it. And for those of you who are still wondering about how long it was before Bing discovered his bliss, and you would not be amiss for wanting to know. So let me just say quietly, for all the time it took no time at all. Epilogue. I read a lot. Unfortunately, not as much as I would like for all kinds of reasons. It's way too hard between the many demands of work, the shifting needs of a growing family, plus the innumerable invitations to lecture, and all the other pure pleasure perks that are a result of helping guide a thriving business and writing books. But still I wake up every morning of the world to pore over as much as I can, reading the reports that I must, carefully choosing other great material of interest. I mostly sneak in the less serious stuff whenever I'm traveling, taking a break from burdening my brain with commerce, usually staying clear of the business terms. I make it a point to happily clock the time in a packed plan with a wellspring of general interest books, magazines, journals, and papers just to remind myself what the ground is like. Why am I telling you all this? It was on one of my travels, skiing from the left coast to the right coast in an airliner at some 37,000 feet when I came across a just so dazzlingly wonderful article in that day's paper that locked my total attention. This is exactly how the deadline read. New frog jumps thousands of years. Remarkable discovery excites scientists. Yes, you read that right. And here is the gist of the story as it was printed. An ecological treasure of a new frog species has been discovered among the lush, serene wetlands of China's imperial garden, located on the northwestern outskirts of Beijing and reveal forest architectural grandeur, landscape beauty, and pristine ponds. The Imperial Garden has also been known as the Garden of Gardens by the Chinese for centuries. The discovery of this unique species makes the wetlands a new center of frog diversity and increases the urgency for protecting the area of habitat from the effects of mass development. Biologists at the Free University of Brussels in Belgium described the new species as so remarkable for its powerful hind legs and jumping ability that it warrants the establishment of a new frog family of which it is the only member. I was stunned, excited too, as I went with the hoopla of the article, each sentence tugging on my heartstrings, reconfirming my belief that happiness is indeed in the air we breathe, a constant that awaits us all. By the time I got back to my office, so keyed up was I with anticipation, hoping happily that Google might possibly have more of the story, that I went to my computer first thing, hurried. And you know what? I almost fell out of my chair when I was able to pull up a picture of the new profile. Even today, if you do a search study, the picture you hit upon, and see the bright, happy smile, and you will not doubt its ancestry. And as exhilarating as the whole thing is, the article noted that because of environmental problems, the future of this new species may be in dire doubt. Maybe they're right. Maybe. I'll go without words. To change the future, one needs only to change the present, and that anyone's real future begins with a triumphant commitment to the present. As for the past, well, that, as you have hopefully come to know now, is another story. Wishing you a living, love what you do what you love life.